Proportional Response, Book 1, Chapter 17, Part 4. We have known. Kasler sat in the dark silence of the council chamber, the sound of a platform undocking from the wall echoing in his ears. A single shaft of light suddenly illuminated Henry's platform as it rose from the depths of the chamber. The platform had already turned so that the human faced the ambassadors. Henry stood there gazing intently about the chamber as his platform slowly, ponderously rose. Kasler's display suddenly lit up to show him a close-up of Henry which went from the man's waist to his head. Henry turned that furious glare on the camera so that Kasler could imagine it was directed squarely at him. And the fury sent a tingle up even his spine, and stared for a moment. The man then raised one gloved hand. I have never seen him wear gloves outside the practice field. Why? Henry's other hand came up, and the man slowly, meticulously, pulled the gloves off and set them aside. Kasler heard a collective gasp from many of the ambassadors, maybe even most of them. Human entertainment has become more popular than I thought, or more ambassadors are trying to learn more about humanity. It seems like a lot of them understood the reference. Henry's voice came out stone hard. We discovered the Exalted override backdoor for all controls in this chamber long ago. We have appropriated that backdoor and now have sole control of it. These are the same controls Jalat used some days ago to illegally shut down the microphones and move the platforms of several ambassadors. Henry's platform moved until it hovered directly above Jalat, something the safety protocols of the chamber should not allow it to do. Henry's mic should also be picking up Jalat's furious screaming, but it only broadcasts words from the human. The so-called evidence shown here, in the very Council of the League, of a human war machine bent on the subjugation of all sapient life, is patently false. The false evidence was accompanied by equally false Zoltan document codes. The video displayed to the Council was entered in by their hackers into the Council archives barely an hour ago and came from the Sultan Embassy, not directly from their warships. I am forwarding to everyone proof of this in the form of the full technical specification for Zoltan document codes, including part of the hash which contains the timestamp of the moment the document entered the Zoltan archives and video. The Zoltans are claiming as evidence has already been copied by them to all ambassadors. Do not take my word for it that the codes were altered, my fellow sapients. Have your own technicians check it. As further evidence of the treachery here, today, I will now show everyone the video of what actually happened some dozen hours ago. Kasler wanted to sit back and close his eyes and his ears as the fateful hollow sprang into being, writ large in the open air of the council chamber. A panicked human voice, nearly stuttering with fear, filled the chamber. Please no, you can't do this. We are a civilian vessel, and most of us are indentures who were put aboard in stasis pods. The ones you want are all dead already. We aren't sure, but we think they died when they took the ship to FTL without being in stasis themselves. We have no control of the ship and no way to fight. We surrender. The reply from the Zoltan captain played as he spoke over the human, trying to cut him off, but a readout on Kasler's display gave him the words of both speakers. Something he'd lacked when he heard the recording last night. The Zoltan ships converged on the massive human vessel and launched a volley of fire. The human voice started up again, his voice cracking from the strain. What did you just do? All sorts of automated systems are starting up. Oh no. Someone find a way to abort that. We have no way to fight that many ships. The human vessel deployed countermeasures, effectively stopping the small volley of fire which had been aimed at it. Moments later, a handful of human warships came out of the massive vessel and turned to engage the Zoltan fleet. Between the size of the display and the fact that he had braced himself for what he saw, Kasler managed to notice a lot more detail from the recording this time. Those ships are not maneuvering properly. Their movements are almost too precise, but completely the wrong configuration for. They are automated, completely automated warships. Those old leaders were insane. Another volley of fire, orders of magnitude more than the previous one, meant to test the larger ship's defenses. met the handful of actual warships, and made short work of them. The next volley of fire cut off the humans' pleading as the immense ship just exploded in a flash of light under Sultan weaponry. That explosion. I have seen an effect like that before when a ship died, but on such a massive scale, it is strange. Of course, a warship of that size could have stood up to that volley, but a civilian ship stood no chance at all. Another great victory for a bunch of Sultan butchers. The recording stopped, and the light level in the council chamber slowly rose to reveal Henry with his platform still above a wildly gesturing, screaming Jalat. Caslor could faintly hear her screams across the space between himself and the podium, but couldn't quite make out the words. I am not sure she is even screaming intelligibly at this point. No one but Jalat moved. Looking around, Caslor wondered how many ambassadors had been unconsciously holding their breath. Many looked afraid. Others simply looked stunned. Some few looked very angry, mostly at Jalat, though a few angry stares seemed to be aimed at Henry. Caslor took careful note of the last category, but found only those he expected. Henry stood like a statue, but his platform moved again. It went forward, down, and then slowly turned so that he faced Jalat. He spoke in a quiet voice, but the sound system amplified it so that it seemed to boom from all directions. "Shut up, Jalat." Jalat stepped over from beside the podium, and Caslor could see her judge the distance between herself and Henry's platform. It seemed she didn't like her chances because she yelled again and made a rude gesture at Henry. Caslor's eyes went up when her words suddenly carried through the chamber. "I am not monkey-born like you, you hairless chimp, but you know that, and you keep your platform too far for me to reach. Coward, bring that platform closer, and I will kill you, here and now, for all to witness." Yora gasped behind him, and Golnar made an angry noise, even as Caslor felt his eyebrows draw down. Her eyes are red, she means it. One of the few rules the Zoltans have held sacrosanct, and she is ready to breach it. Henry's platform moved far closer to Jalat, and turned so that the jump could be made even easier. He then turned to face her and moved himself to the far side of his platform to give her ample space to land. He spoke again in those quiet tones. "Your personal signature is on those orders, Jalat. I have read those orders. You knew it was a civilian ship, and so did the commander of the ships you sent out. What is about to happen is your fault, and everything that is going to befall your voting class in general, and your family in particular, is on your head. That was not a military mission. It was a terrorist strike, and humanity holds you personally responsible. I hold you personally responsible. But you have made a direct threat on my life. Here, in these chambers, you have threatened violence." Henry spread his hands wide. "I am right here. Even you can bridge that gap." Henry dramatically threw off his ambassadorial robes to reveal a simple, somewhat loose-fitting, unassuming garment that had obviously been designed to give him maximum freedom to move. "Make your play if you have the tail for it, bitch." Jalat roared. Thankfully, the sound system's safeguards refused to amplify the sound. Caslor held his breath. Throughout the centuries, the Zoltans had kept one rule sacred above all others: no violence allowed in the council chambers. The fact that they didn't seem to see sabotaging someone's platform, so they fell to their deaths as violence notwithstanding. The echoes of the roar died, and Jalat took a step back, her eyes suddenly an even brighter red. Henry shifted his weight slightly, and his hands came up a fraction. Caslor could tell when their eyes met. Jalat suddenly froze, even the lashing of her tail stopping in the middle of its movement. The red in her eyes faded slowly for a moment, then suddenly vanished. A bully will only fight when she knows she can win, and their supposed courage fails when faced with a real opponent. Jalat's claws retracted hard, and her tail curled slightly a moment. "I am glad I spent the time with Enable, learning the micro-expressions of other races. Those are the two big signs, and I would likely have understood them before, but I can practically see her thoughts written all over her body. She is afraid. Afraid in a way she has never been before. She, who believed herself to be the apex predator of the entire known universe, has looked into the eyes of a greater predator and realized she was outmatched. It only took a moment for Jalat to get a hold of herself, and all her microtells vanished. She stood ramrod straight, deliberately stilled her tail, and turned to face her podium. She spoke, but Henry had already filtered her voice again. The human's platform moved away from her before he spoke.
No, Jalat, I am not going to let you try to make some sort of mealy-mouthed statement to save face. You have threatened to kill me with your own claws, and backed down in fear from a mere look when you were given a perfect chance. No doubt you are already planning a dagger for my back, which is why I have moved my platform away from you.
Henry turned to face the ambassadors before he continued.
The civilians who were slaughtered in that video were the most helpless, vulnerable, and abused humans that have lived since before the founding of my species' confederation. They were enslaved, brutally, in direct contravention to the laws created by this council and the Charter of the Confederation of Worlds. How, you may ask? By the trickery and devilry of the very leaders trained up at this council's order, with the intent that those leaders would lead my people down a path of self-destruction. All of you can quit gesturing in protest. Humanity penetrated the council database long ago and retrieved the relevant files on our confistration, on the attempts of this governmental body to uplift humanity to death, as you successfully did to many sapiens before us.
Henry hit a button, and Kasler reluctantly looked down at his display. A video of the vote to destroy humanity came up, though the audio had mercifully been left off. Kasler looked at the video, then around the council chambers. He saw several ambassadors still in the council who had been part of that vote. Each of them began to shift uncomfortably. Kasler's brows furrowed as he watched Henry look around the room, and noticed that the human pointedly avoided looking at the particularly uncomfortable ambassador. The tension rose in the chamber, and everyone began to fall silent. "What are you playing at, Henry?" At length, Henry spoke again.
You see, we know. We have known. We have always known.
Henry's voice grew quiet, and the man cast his eyes downward.
I have always known, as you have sat here and tried, to my face, to deny it. I have known. As I have sent my own men out to defend your lives and keep you safe from the predations of the Ultons, or occasionally one another, I have known. As I have directed my government to send military aid, to send humans to their deaths, in order to protect your citizens, I have known.
Henry suddenly looked up, and fury seemed to burn from the man. His words came at normal volume, but that sounded like a shout after his quiet declarations.
And there is something very important about that. I want all of you, everyone who sees this, now and for all time, to know I forgive you.
We forgive you. Humanity forgives you. We know all too well what it is like to live in fear, to live under the boot of tyranny, thanks partly to your confistration, but also from our own difficult history. So, we forgive you.